Who are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to People Making Money. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we're here every Wednesday at 10 o'clock Pacific time to talk about job hunting, building a business, wealth building, all of the financial issues of life and how to stay on top of them and prosper. So today I'm welcoming back my friend, Tom Kerrins. Tom was on the show. Gosh, now I don't remember. It was you were talking about reverse mortgages, as I recall, last time you were on the show, Tom.
Well, in retirement, we talked about trying to get self-actualize your retirement through using your real estate assets.
Yeah. So Tom and I are working on a project, and we were talking one day a few months ago, and he told me about the presentation that he does on how to avoid getting scammed. And I thought this is a huge topic. I know my bank just did a seminar on the most common frauds that are perpetrated against bank accounts. To wire money these days, it's no longer a simple matter. They always call for a verbal confirmation now. So all of everybody is very aware of getting scammed, and I think it's very important with everything, so many things online. We're all very vulnerable. So Tom, I really appreciate you coming on the show today to talk about this subject.
Well, great. Thanks for having me, Kevin. I really appreciate it. And I think it's a really important subject for older adults. And so you'll see part of the presentation, not part of it, the presentation has been put together by the CFPB and the FDIC together. So obviously some people higher up than us think it's a really important topic. Indeed. As well.
So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Bring up the presentation, and why don't you take it away?
Well, great. So we're going to talk about, the presentation name is Money Smart. It's a whole program that, as I said, the CFPB and the FDIC put together, and basically they you can go to the next slide. They have put this together to help older citizens protect their assets, because that's one of the important things is older citizens have assets, right? That's how they got to be old. Or part of how they got to be old. So a couple of things about this, our next slide, please. So we want to talk about what we're trying to accomplish here. We want people to understand that, to reduce the risk of exploitation, to guard against theft, to plan for unexpected loss, all of the items that are listed here, right? These are our objective, is to try and protect people from losing their money to people that have bad intentions. So next slide, please. So first thing that we do is define what is financial exploitation. And, basically it's just somebody using your or other people's resources for personal gain, right? That's what it is. So in terms of, next slide, please. So these are the things that, we want to guard against, is the fraudulent use of our funds by somebody else, right? Or actions that deprive people of their access to their money. Next slide, please.
And it is, I think we should note that while elderly people or older people are perhaps more prone to this, these kinds of scams are perpetrated on people who are not elderly.
Sure, absolutely. Anyone, and that's the point of the slide, anyone can be the victim of this, right? So it's not just older people, but older people in particular. Actually, let's go to the next slide. Older people in particular are targets of this because because of their standing in the world, right? They have assets. Uh, they tend to be trusting and polite. They tend to be good people, and also at the same time, they tend to be a little bit more vulnerable to and trusting of other people because you start to depend on other people as
Hmm.
you become older, and that puts older people really at risk,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? And, the other thing too is that, and next slide, please. Um, Older people's situations are such that they are at risk because maybe they have caregivers, or maybe they have other people that are new to them, right? Who come into their situation to help with their with their situation of health and well-being, and not everybody's
Hmm.
trustworthy or honest. So that's part of the reason why older adults are at risk as well, is that they're in this situation. They maybe are dealing with people that they're not familiar with. They maybe perhaps have started to have a little bit of cognitive dissonance, or just losing a little bit of their ability to
Hmm.
handle everything. And or the other thing is they can also be dependent on a family member. As you're going to see as we go through this, it's varied as to who the person who causes the
Hmm.
problem is,
Absolutely.
right? So let's go to the next slide. So some of the examples of this, you can see here. It's exploitation by an agent. There's investment fraud. There's theft. Um, there's a scam called the lottery or sweepstakes scam. I mean, I think we all know the publisher clearinghouse thing that we all
Hmm.
grew up with, right? I mean, there's variations of that theme that people tend to use to try and get money. There's next slide. Um, and then there's other scams like what they call the grandparent or imposter scams, um, tax and debt collection, romance, telemarketer. These are all types of scam that that come
Hmm.
up. And so anyway, so next slide, and let's go to the next one after that. So the question is, who are the abusers? And as we see, the graphic is the wolf in
Huh.
sheep's clothing, right? So so you know, there's many different potential abusers in the situation, and they're not just strangers, family members and caregivers, friends, neighbors, or acquaintances, agents. Who have been given a power of attorney, which we'll discuss a little bit about that
Hmm.
later, financial advisors. Those are all people in a person's network, in a senior person's network, who can be part of the scam. Hopefully not, but that's what can happen. And then next slide. There's the strangers, right? There's the people who are strangers, but uh, come into contact. Telephone and mail scammers, internet people on the internet, home repair contractors, Medicare scam operators. We're going to talk about another scam called the romance scam. And so all of these are different people who aren't necessarily friends or in the social network of the senior, but who can get access to the senior and then try to work on scamming them out of their funds.
And Bailey, it seems to
So
me that for those of us who have or deal with elderly people, maybe they're our relatives or do so professionally, they're particularly vulnerable when their family maybe lives out of state. So I know a close friend of mine, his father lived here in LA, he lived in Texas, and while he could see his father's bank account and finally noticed some weird transactions going on, Because he wasn't here, he didn't know that his father's caregiver was essentially stealing money from his father. And when he talked to his father about it, his father got very upset because his father felt very close to the caregiver. She was taking care of him, and it became a very difficult situation to resolve. And in the end, he got, my friend fired the caregiver, but they never got the money back because the father just would not take the action necessary to do that.
Well, funny you should mention that, because if you go to the next slide, you'll see that that's exactly one of the not principles, but one of the factors of this situation, which is, why don't people report this more often? Why don't they protect themselves? Why don't they go to the different resources that are available to help protect them? And it's because sometimes they feel shame or embarrassment. Sometimes it's a family person and they just don't want to. I mean, it could be a grandkid, or it could be a son or a daughter or somebody, and they just are used to dealing with that person and they don't want to cause that person problem, even though they're really taking advantage of them. They also are afraid that people aren't going to believe them, or that sometimes the person who's doing the abuse, actually they're dependent on that person. And so they're very worried that if they cross that person, that they're going to do even worse to them. And then also there's a lot of denial, self-blame, lack of awareness. I mean, you can see all of these different things here. And, that's kind of the personality thing that helps to cause this to take place. And that's really important for anybody out there, to understand that you need to overcome this, because, you need to stop it from happening, because it can really be expensive and debilitating to your financial situation. So next slide. So, let's talk a little bit about that. Who can you count on to help you? And I mean, one of the things about situation for seniors, I mean, they talk a lot about, when you're talking about longevity, they talk about your social network being probably the most important factor that can help you, keep mental and physical health in your older years. So, that's your number one thing, is your social network. But besides that, probably the number one place that you can go as a senior is Adult Protective Services, and they're all around. They're in every county, they're in every city, they're in every state. And that's a very good place that if you can't figure out anywhere else to start, that's a really good place to start. You can also call the police, but the police tend to be less able to deal with this type of situation. They're much more able to deal with physical and situations, and more physical crimes. So then next slide. And then the other places you can go is that if wherever your accounts are, you should try to keep some kind of contact with somebody at the bank. And also, if you have some type of situation like an automobile or some other product that you have credit, that how to contact the creditor as well, to let them know if you're seeing problems or being abused in the situation. And finally, they talk about being able to go to the consumerfinance.gov if you see the address down at the bottom. But I would say to you, I think the number one thing for a senior would be Adult Protective Services, because they can do a lot of different things and they have a lot of powers.
Right, for sure.
So, and then the next part of this is, let's talk about the different types of professionals that you're going to get involved with, and how you might get involved with those people. So one person is a fiduciary, and a lot of times, if you're lacking somebody else to handle your affairs, you can hire a professional fiduciary. And by the very term of the word, Kevin, I know you're very familiar with it. A fiduciary is somebody who has to act on faith for you. that they should put your interests ahead of
Right.
theirs in how they do things,
Hmm.
right? So that's a very solemn and serious relationship. And and the person that does it takes on risks because they have this very heavy
Hmm.
responsibility of how to act to you. So but again, it's only as good as the person that you
Right.
get to do it, right? I mean, if that person is really good. So you want to be really careful about,
Hmm.
what they do. You can see on the slide, make sure that they keep good records and they keep your money separate, and they act in your
Right.
interest, right? So that's really important to do.
I'll
Now,
just interject here real
next slide.
quickly.
Go
One
ahead.
of the things
Please
in
do.
dealing with a professional fiduciary that I recommend to people is that they make sure the fiduciary is reporting to them on a periodic basis, typically monthly, so they can see what the fiduciary is actually doing. And if the fiduciary is reluctant or unwilling to do that, that's a sign you probably don't want to hire that person. And the other thing is, while here in California, fiduciaries have to carry a license, in the rest of the country they don't. But you can go to an organization like the um, Alliance of Independent Trustees, or the Independent Trustees Alliance, I should say, and that's an organization in which I'm a member, and we self-police. So if we find out that a member has acted improperly, we're going to take action against that member, in addition to what anyone whose affairs that member is handling will be able to do as well. So, couple of tips there for dealing with fiduciaries.
Yeah, no, it's a very important relationship, so you don't take it lightly, and you need to really consult with people that you know and
Right.
trust before you decide to
Yep.
use
Exactly.
somebody. Um, and then the next thing we wanted to cover is a power of attorney, and that can be a fairly lengthy discussion, but really quickly, a power of attorney is somebody that you would decide uh, could help make decisions for you, and it gives them powers to do certain things on your behalf, depending on what your status is at any
Hmm.
given time. It's fairly inexpensive to create. An attorney can do it for you. Again, a very important relationship, and one that you don't do lightly. And then also, you can go to the next slide,
Hmm.
Kevin. Um, So some of the risks of a power of attorney is that that person might take more authority than you actually want them to do, because you've given them the ability to do that. They can misuse your funds, and they can do actions that you haven't necessarily authorized because you've given them the permission to
Hmm.
do that. And then,
Hmm.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Kevin. And then one other thing, to talk about, in power of attorneys, there's a big difference between a standard power of attorney and a durable power of attorney. And the difference is that a durable power of attorney can stay in effect even if you lose the capacity to continue to make decisions. So again, that's super important distinction, and super important for you to understand who it is that you're giving this right to, because you may end up in a situation where you're not capable of making decisions, and that person's going to have total
Right.
authority to do
Right.
that.
E- e-
So very
Even over your
important.
healthcare decisions. Right.
Yes, that's right. So the next slide. Oh, you
Hmm.
got it. Just stay there. So, when you're doing that, trust but verify, right? The old Ronald Reagan thing. Um, and basically, as you look at the slide, just be really careful about who you do this with, and realize that as long as you have capacity, you can change, cancel, or revoke it at any time. And in particular, one of the things that they really want to emphasize is, do not give this power to your caregivers or
Hmm.
helpers, because they're there to give you care and help, not to manage your financial decisions. Try to find somebody who you feel very comfortable with, has the capacity and the capability to handle your finance. And in particular, be really careful about someone who you haven't met that long, who suddenly comes along and all of a sudden they become your power of attorney, right? That's not a good situation. Next slide. And then in general, a really important principle is start thinking about planning ahead on all of this stuff. Make sure you've thought about it, that you kind of develop a plan and really start to put that in place, because that's going to really help you. It's sometimes it's too late when everything starts happening and you don't have the plan in place. It's too late to then, to start trying to accomplish it at that time. So,
and these things you're talking about, durable powers of attorney and such, these are all part of a properly constructed estate plan. I think we think of an estate plan as what's going to happen after we die, but a properly constituted estate plan deals with the situation even before, we're dead. It deals with what'll happen if we become incapacitated or just are unable to handle our affairs, properly. So all of that should be dealt with as part of an estate plan.
Sure, absolutely. Very well said. So can we go to slide 25 now? So the next aspect we want to talk about is abuse by caregivers and in-home helpers. So this is a really big issue that happens constantly. And it's part of the reason is because the people who are our caregivers are in this situation, they move from situation to situation. And some of them developed really good skills at taking care of people, and others of them develop really good skills at how to scam people and get their money. So you want to be really careful about who your caregivers are, who your in-home helpers, and that they're not kind of colluding with your family members to get your money. Right. That's another. And you'll see as we go through this some other safeguards. So next slide. So here's talking about some safeguards. You want to be careful with your financial documents, get receipts, monitor your bank accounts, and try to do as much as you can automatically to where somebody doesn't have the chance to get involved in it on your behalf. Next slide. And then also really be careful about, the recommendation is don't let your caregivers open your bills. Don't let them pay your bills. Don't let them handle your finances. Get family members or professionals or fiduciaries to do that for you. And in particular, never give anybody your credit or ATM cards. I mean, it might feel like it's convenient and it's handy for you to do that every now and then. It's a really bad idea, particularly as the older you get, because you're not going to be able to monitor all of it. And, that's how people can get their hands in your pocket. So really be careful of that. Next slide. And then also last thing, you can get a free credit report at annualcreditreport.com. That's a good idea to see, because if somebody's opening up credit on your behalf, then you might not know it. And then just in general, secure your valuables and really watch your financial statements. So next slide, please. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the specifics of different scams that happen. So the first one we're going to talk about is a romance scam. Some people feel that all romance is a scam, but anyway, in the context that we're talking about, it's somebody who tries to play on your emotions to get your money. That's basically what it is. And they do a lot of different things. They use a false identity. They try and build trust. Once they start to feel like they've gotten into your emotional, good graces, that they'll then start asking for money. So really be careful about, in any type of relationship you form. And these people come from all different places, right? They'll come online, they'll come in person, they'll come in different places. But the minute that somebody starts to want money out of you, realize what that potentially is, right? That it's not necessarily a great romance, but it's just somebody trying to get some money from you. Next slide. And here's some of the things they do, right? They'll claim they need money for surgery or a medical bill. They'll ask, they'll tell you they have some, debts in the past, or gambling or problems or whatever. They'll also ask you for money to travel, like to try and play on the fact that, yeah, sure, if you're involved with somebody, you'd want to see them. All of these things that they'll try to do, right? And the whole idea that you need to see is that a really good, true emotional relationship does not revolve around you giving them money all the time. So when you see somebody trying to do that, try to recognize that that's really what it is. Next slide. And this is how they try to get at, this is where they come from. So they'll come from social media, dating apps, websites, text messages. They'll try and make themselves be out something that maybe they don't really have the capability of being, like somebody that just seems too good to be true. People steal photos and that type of thing to do this. So you really want to be careful on the online thing, to be really wary about who you're dealing with. And on an app like Facebook or whatever, there's people that will come from all sorts of different places. You really want to keep your friends closer, right? But not let your enemies get so close. Anyway, next one. And then they can also, so we were talking about online. In person, this can all happen as well. Somebody just gets, you meet them somewhere at a church thing or some kind of social thing, you get started, and then next thing you know, the key to it is that you need to really be cognizant to see if you feel like every time you're getting together, they're trying to get their hand in your pocket, see that for what it is, right? That's what's really important. And, you might think that this is like, oh yeah, doesn't happen. It happens all the time.
I'm sure.
Believe me. I could tell you some really stories about this, but so some other warning signs. Next slide, Kevin. If they're overly complimentary and flirtatious, shower you with attention, want you to keep the relationship a secret, that's a really big warning sign there. And show unusual interest in your finances, right? That's what you're really looking for, to see if it holds the test of a true relationship or a scam. And next slide. And this is how, some things you can do if you feel that this is happening to you. And again, this goes back to what we talked about previously, when the whole idea is that you need to not feel reluctant to talk to somebody about this, right? Don't feel embarrassed or whatever, because the faster you can, get somebody else involved, get some authorities involved or whatever, the better chance you have of preserving your money, right? But if you look at these are all common sense things to do. If you start to think that this is happening to you, right? Stop talking to them. Get in touch with somebody in your social network and let them know what's going on, right? Talk to the bank and let them know that if you've sent them some money, right? And report them to all of the different agencies that you can as soon as possible. So those are all things to do. So now we're going to talk about investment fraud. So let's go to the next slide there. And again, this is something that happens to seniors all the time. And some things to really be looking for is people that have misleading designations. They say, "Oh, I'm a senior expert. I'm
Hmm.
this. I'm that." Um, that's something to look at. Uh, Ponzi schemes are something where people get investment schemes, get money from people, and then they pay money out to the initial investors while they get more money from somebody else, and then they spend your money. So be really careful about investments that you get involved in. You have to look for unscrupulous advisors, and a lot of times it'll be somebody who's in your network, and they call it an affinity fraud, right? Where they're like, "Well, yeah, I'm the same as you, right? I belong to the golf club like you. I belong to the, Silver Travelers
Right.
Club or whatever." That's affinity fraud. That's people that are trying to get into your pocket by saying,
Right.
I'm just
Right.
like you,
Absolutely.
right? So, and you got to and look for people trying to sell you inappropriate or fraudulent financial products like
Hmm.
annuities. Not to say that all annuities are bad. Some annuities are really good, but there are very inappropriate ones as well, the ones that people make really big commissions on. So here's some things. The next couple of slides, you can just roll through them a couple of seconds each. Places that you can go to check if you're using a financial advisor. You can check on their background. Um, you can go to the next one. Um, but the main thing I would say to you is just work within your social network, right? Don't just work with people that you don't know anything about. So that's what's really important. And yeah, you're on, and then down to the last slide, which is timing is critical. The longer it takes for you to report this, the less chance you're going to have of ever getting any of your money
Hmm.
back. So that's really, really important. Don't let embarrassment or fear stop you from reporting this, right? Take immediate action and get it done.
Hmm.
Um, and then the next few slides, let's go to 42.
Hmm.
Just we can talk about different pointers about what to do about investments, but the main thing is, in all of these things, the details in these slides, the important thing is to find somebody who you have you decide to work with them because of knowledge of what they've done,
Hmm.
right? Referrals are typically the best. As long as you have decent friends in your network, referrals from those friends can be the best way of finding some of this
Hmm.
stuff out. There are some things that protect money, and some institutions. FDI insurance covers $250,000
Hmm.
per account. Um, but that protects you if the bank goes under or
Right.
gets lost. It doesn't protect you from fraud.
Yep.
So anyway, you can roll through the next couple, Kevin. Okay, and next we're going to talk about some telephone and internet scams that come
Hmm.
up. And some of these are outrageous, and you wouldn't believe they could possibly happen. But so the first one we're going to talk about, next slide, is the grandparent scam. So the whole idea of this is that somebody gets your information, they know who your grandkids are, and they try to mimic or imitate who the grandkids are. They create a situation where they call and tell you that they're in trouble, they need money. Please don't tell, my mother, don't tell my father, and just send me the money. So anytime somebody's telling you, just send me the money, the hairs on the back of your neck should
Hmm.
stand up, right? That's just something. And I can tell you, I know of a situation recently, a person who has millions of dollars of funds, who got involved with somebody, and they were telling them, "Oh, I need to go to the bank and get this cash." The person did it twice before the person at the bank finally told them, "Wait a minute, I think something's wrong. This person was getting like $8,000 or $9,000 out of the bank and bringing it outside and handing it to somebody. Well, at the end of the day, $36,000 later, gone out the window, right? So you want to be really observant of the fact if any money's leaving your hands, be really skeptical
Right.
about how that's happening. So we talked about the grandparent scam. Next slide. One of the big things that people do is they use agencies, particularly the IRS, and they will call you and say, I'm calling from the IRS. You owe taxes. If you don't do this right away, you're going to get in, more trouble than you've ever gotten in your life. They try to put you in an emotional prison and you feel the only way you can get out is to give them money. And the thing to understand about this is that these agencies are never going to call you for money, right? The IRS will never pick up the phone and say, hey, Kevin, you owe us money. Give it to us right away. That's not how they work, right? They have a whole different criteria of how they do things. They really start with letters and send them out to people. And, the whole thing is that if you have your network set up properly, have people that can help you with this stuff so that when someone says, hey, you need money, you have a very comfortable phone call to make to somebody else to say, this will work. And I can tell you, somebody did this to me like a week and a half ago. They called me. I belong to an association. I'm the membership director. They called me and said, oh, the president needs to get this money to the speaker for tonight's meeting. And she's away from her, phone, and she's doesn't have the ability to transfer it. She needs you to do this and she'll reimburse you tonight. I mean, and it's like for the first 10 seconds, I was like, oh my God, I got to help. And then I just thought, wait a minute, having read through these slides, it saved me. Anyway, so next slide. So this is things they do, though. They send bogus emails, they mimic a call, and they'll just threaten you, right? That's all the MO. And if you go to the next slide, Kevin. So in particular for the IRS, these are all things that are true. They always send a written notification. They never ask for payment over the phone, and they never request your financial information by email. So if any of those things are happening, that's not the IRS. That's somebody else. Right. And next slide. Here's some things you can do. If you feel like you owe taxes, there's an 800 number you can call. And if you don't owe the taxes, you can report them as well. And then, okay, so next slide. Then we'll talk about lottery and sweepstakes scams. These are things where they send you information, tell you won something. So here's basically the scam is you won something, but you have to pay us first before you get your prize. Ridiculous.
That's unbelievable.
Right? Like you don't need anybody in your life who wants you to pay for the privilege of getting a prize.
Right, exactly.
Because that's not really a prize. And there's no guarantee that they're going to send you the money.
Yeah.
Right. And keep in mind, next slide, some tips on this. Think about it. If you didn't enter the contest to begin with, right? If you can't remember that you entered this contest, how do you think you won? And never pay to play, right? And never be suspicious of anybody that's telling you wire funds or get funds, or they tell you to get, money cards or something like that, right? Anything like that, just be really, really skeptical.
There's a new one going around the last few months. I get text messages telling me that I owe money for tolls for using some toll road, right? And
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
the first time it happened, I thought, oh, well, maybe a friend of mine was using, I know a friend of mine had used my car, and I thought, well, maybe he used a toll road, right? So I called him up and he said, yeah, I did use a toll road, but I paid. Anyway, long story short, I now periodically get these, and they're coming from foreign phone numbers. So it's clearly a
Right.
scam. And if I were to click through on that link, first of all, they would probably have access to everything on my phone now. But they're just it's clearly a scam. People are ingenious about scamming.
Yeah, well, the internet's just opened up a whole new,
Right.
world of doing this. It's the same type of, methods, but now they have a lot of more instruments to use and it takes it much
Hmm.
farther away. I always remember this commercial on TV. I thought it was very effective because I don't know if you remember the Nigerian scam where they would say that there was a prince in
Right.
Nigeria and he had, got money and you needed to send him some money and he'd send you
Right.
millions of dollars. And they did that commercial on TV as if the person was on the bus, right? You're on a bus and the other person's on the bus and he's saying to you, "Oh, hey, I'm a Nigerian prince and I'm trying to," and you realize how absurd it would be,
Right.
right?
Right.
But on the internet, it makes it seem, much more
Yeah.
palatable or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, let's go to the next slide. And so we're just gonna rifle through the several different scams. Phantom debt collection. They're gonna call you and say you owe some money, pay it. Um, Obviously, if you can't remember what you did, if you don't have any familiarity with it, you should really be very
Mhm.
skeptical. Sometimes they'll pose as law enforcement agents, but the whole thing is the same. Um, and then yeah, that's it's just always trying to make you feel like put you in a mental prison is really what
Mhm.
they try to do. And then the only way to get out is for you to pay them
Mhm.
money. So when you feel like you're in that situation, just stop and don't do anything because you're not in a prison. You're just, the subject of somebody trying to get your money. Um, and here's some safeguards for. We can go to the next slide. Um, you know, if somebody starts doing this to you, try and the whole idea is to turn it on them, make them give you the
Mhm.
information, right? Ask for things in writing, try and get their name, address, and phone number. You'll see that it breaks down really fast at that point because they don't have the information or they don't want to give you
Mhm.
their information. So that's one of the ways. Whenever you feel like they're putting you in this situation, it's like turn it on them and start asking for information. You'll find it breaks down really quickly. Next slide um, is a charity scam. So same deal. Oh, we represent the tunas of the Pacific Ocean or whatever. um, we you know we're trying to get money from you, and this is particularly again, seniors are very much in the wheelhouse of the people of charity scams because they are
Mhm.
nice people, right? Seniors are nice people. They've lived their whole life, they have experience, they have assets, and they tend to want to do
Mhm.
good, right? Everybody wants to do good. And so a charity scam is really right, on the wheelhouse of somebody trying to get money
Right.
from seniors. So you can see on the slide things that they do. If we go to the next slide, Kevin, they're going to pressure you to donate immediately. They want cash or wire, and never do that because if you are going to actually give money to a charity, you want to make sure you have a record of it so you can at least deduct it on your taxes if that works for you. Um, and then they try and get your account or routing numbers and information. And sometimes sometimes the charities will have a scam
Mhm.
contest, right? That they'll tell you
Right.
won or
Yeah.
whatever. Next slide. So again, if you are going to go along with this at all, start asking for information, right? That's the most important thing. Turn the situation against them. Go to the next slide, please. And you want to try to make sure. Next slide. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. You want to try to make sure that it's tax deductible and that the organization is tax exempt as well. So, and again, next slide. Make sure that you pay in some way that you have a record of it. That will at least help you write it off, and it might help you recover your money in a situation if they've
Right,
got it
especially
for
with a
you.
credit card, because you can always
then the
report
next-
credit card fraud and yeah.
That's correct. Yes. And the credit card company is then responsible to go back to them. So that's a really good point, Kevin, that if you're going to donate, a lot of times do it on a credit card. Then some other scams is a thing they call spoofing or phishing, where they'll create something, an email, a text or whatever, and try and excite you to action, to do something. And that you want to really try to stay away. It's like the email. One of the things with email is really look at the address, because a lot of times the email will look really, really great. But when you actually look at the address, it'll say, from Joe at Gmail or something like that. Well, Joe at Gmail is not sending emails for the AT&T Uverse, right? I mean,
yeah, I get used to checking the email address. Anytime I get an email from someone that looks genuine, but I don't know, I'll check the email, and the URL is oftentimes just a string of numbers or something. It's clearly a scam. Yeah.
Right. And if you just want to roll through the next couple of ones, just, there's always language that can show you that this isn't fraud. A lot of times they'll have typos and that kind of thing that should really get your guard up as well. Use good security software. Don't email financial information if you can avoid it. And be really careful about opening attachments, right? And shut your PC off when you're not using it. Those are all really good things that you can do. Next slide. And don't give control of your computer to a third party. That's one of the things I can tell you. I sit here as a victim of that, where I thought I was working with, I use Google Drive a lot. I thought I was working with Google. I even called the number myself. I ended up with somebody else. Next thing I know, they're on my computer. They're starting to tell me, oh yeah, do this, do that. That's when I finally caught on and shut it down. But it can be late, because they can put stuff on your computer that then allows them to get back into it later on. Right. So you want to be really careful. Don't really turn it over unless you really know who that is. And don't just rely on caller ID. And in particular, if somebody says, oh, we're tech support, oh, that you have a problem, Microsoft has this problem, Google has this problem, it's like, do not just simply accept that at face value. Really look into it to make sure that, and 9 times out of 10, I can tell you, Google's not reaching out to you. Microsoft's not reaching out to you about some big problems they have just to you, right? And the other thing with what they call phishing, which is, somebody sends you an email and then tries to get you to click on something. They're just, don't open it if you see it. If it looks suspicious, just delete it. At worst, if it's really somebody trying to get to you and they're really legitimate, they'll find a way, right? They'll either send you another one, or they'll call you, or they'll do something. So don't just click on this stuff willy-nilly. That's kind of,
if it's a big company, a lot of them have email addresses specifically where you can send phishing attempts in there that are done in their name, and then they will follow up on them and do what they can to close that one down. So I know financial institutions in particular, oftentimes the email addresses are phishing at, and then the financial institution's name, thing like that. So sometimes I will look that up and forward the emails to them so they can see what's going on in their name.
Right. So I think we sufficiently covered phishing. So if you can roll through the phishing slides. And on identity theft, you just want to be really careful, right? Your social security number is really important. Your birth date's important. Your credit cards and account numbers, do not give those to people, right? That's once they get those, particularly your social security number, once they got that, there's all kinds of things that they can start to do. So you really want to stay
I know
away
in my
from that.
business where I tell people, do not email me documents with this information in it because emails can be intercepted. I use a platform called Dropbox that allows us to upload documents to it, and it's all encrypted, so it's virtually impossible to steal documents from inside Dropbox. And that way, it's far less likely that people's identity information will be stolen.
Right. And so then, if we can go to, why don't we go to like number 73, Kevin, the medical identity. So this is another whole frontier of identity theft. And that is somebody getting a hold of your medical information, your Medicare number, or your insurance number or whatever, and then using it to, create mayhem for you. Right. And steal money from you. So if we can just go through the next couple of slides really quickly, in medical identity, it's just you can get bills that you didn't receive. You can get different things. You just need to really be careful about who you give your information out to as well. And then the next slide, the medical identity theft, how you respond to it. You want to get your file, make sure what that's in it, write to your health provider to correct it. And also there's another agency called the Senior Medicare Patrol in the state of California. The address is below. You can always contact them. They're constantly on the lookout for medical identity schemes, particularly against
I've never heard of that. That's good to know. Yeah.
Yeah. Me either. So yeah, so they're there. I looked them up online last night, so I know they're real, right?
Either that or they're a super good scam. No, I shouldn't say that, but
anyway. So and then a couple of other types of things. If you're at all looking at reverse mortgages, you want to be really careful. With who you decide to work with on that. A lot of people do solicit over the phone and that type of thing. In my mind, you're much better off finding somebody local in your neighborhood. They can really, you can look them in the eye. It's face to face. They'll actually have a lot of resources they can help you with as well. So to me, that's a really important thing. And then the other side of it with reverse too is you just want to be really careful, because one of the things that happens is it's family members who decide they need your money, and they're going to force you into taking that, right? They're going to really pressure you into doing this so that they can get money from you. And that's not something you particularly want to do. You do not want to do it lightly. You want to do it because it's something that you really feel, is necessary for you to do. So you want to be really careful with that. And also, next slide is besides reverse mortgage scams is also mortgage assistance relief. That's another whole area. If you can go to the next slide, Kevin. So a lot of times if you fall behind in payments or whatever, people come in and they'll tell you all kinds of stuff. Send me your payment. I'll intercede with the lender. Well, they're just trying to take your money, right? So be really careful. If you're in trouble on your mortgage, call somebody in authority. Call the Department of Real Estate. Call the state has agencies that help with mortgage assistance. You can look them up online. Do not just work with somebody. Most of the people who work in that particular area are really very sketchy. So be really careful about that. And then the next one, next slide, is contractor or home improvement fraud. You have to be really, really careful. And the first thing to understand is that the person who's involved in this, they're very high pressure people. They'll come to your door. They'll call you on the phone. They'll try to push you into situations. That's how it starts. So the thing is, as a senior who has lived their whole life, who has, maybe has a home, right, has some funds, when you're doing your home improvements, do not let somebody from the outside push you into doing something, right? It should be because you've decided you want to do it. And then you work through your network to find somebody who's trustworthy, who's maybe worked on the street, work with your neighbors, work with your friends or whatever, and not just take the pressure, right? That's a really important part of this whole thing.
I think it's important to note too that legitimate contractors, especially right now here in California, for example, they don't need to use high pressure tactics. They've got plenty of work. So if you're getting pressured by a contractor to do some kind of work, that right there is something to be skeptical about, because there are not enough people in construction right now, and so there's no reason to be high pressure about getting you to commit to doing some kind of work.
Well said. If you can go to 86. So then there's scams that target veterans too. So you want to be really careful. In particular, and this isn't just for veterans, but people in general as well, it's a scam where they try to get your pension. So you might have a pension and somebody comes in and tells you, oh, it's much better to take a lump sum distribution from the pension. And then as they convince you to do that, they try to insert themselves in so that they get access to the money from the lump sum. And you want to be really careful about that. If you go to the next slide, especially for veterans, people that, there are people that are out there that help you with VA forms because they're complex from time to time. But those people are supposed to be accredited. You can search on that address and you can tell, who is accredited, who isn't. And in general, the idea is if you have a pension, for the most part, keep your pension, right? Keep your monthly thing coming in. You're far better off than a lot of other people if you have that, and don't take the lump sum unless you really have some.
And you can always call, for example, organizations like the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars. They consult on these for free as part of their services to veterans, because they're veteran organizations. So if someone's trying to charge you to do this, that almost for sure that's a scam, because there's so many there's so many veteran organizations that do this as part of their mission, and they don't charge veterans for it, and they don't get into helping you actually receive the money. They're just helping you process the forms and such. So
if you can go to slide 90 now, Kevin. So to kind of put the ending on this, a really important thing is plan for the unexpected, right? If you plan ahead of time, plan about the fact that you're probably going to have health concerns and you're going to have to spend some money on your health care, right? Have that plan set up. Get your Social Security in order, right? And get it on either a direct deposit or a direct, express card. The more that you plan for your future and set this up, the better off you'll be, because then anything where someone's trying to steal money from you is a deviation from that plan, right? So if you don't have a plan, then it's harder to recognize what's part of the plan and what's part of the deviation, right? But if you have a really well-constructed plan and somebody comes in and says, oh, no, you shouldn't be doing that, you should be doing this, that's a deviation from your plan, right? And that should cue you off right off the bat. That you so that's a really important part of it. And then if we can go to slide 93. again, your Social Security, right? Get it on direct deposit or get it on direct express card so that you're not, so somebody can't intercede and get
Right.
control over your check. Next slide. You want to have this stuff available for you, not for the fraudster, but for you. Have your driver's license and government ID, your insurance card, your Social Security. If you have that stuff in a secure place, then you'll be able to get it when the good guys actually need the information,
For
right?
sure.
For help. Next slide. Some other things you need: have cash, have a list of phone numbers, important account numbers, and if you have a safe deposit box, make sure you know where the key is, that you have control to getting the key.
All of this kept in a safe place
and
where a caregiver can't get it. Yep.
Right. Yes. Next slide. Protect your documents. If you can make electronic images for storage, that's a really good thing. Try and get all of that in one place. And again, like Kevin said, in a very secure place as well. Next slide. And here it is. Keep it in a safe deposit box or keep it at home in a fireproof safe. Those are really good things to do as well. And pretty much that's really about it for now. The main thing is, if it sounds too good, it probably is, right? If you want to be just really careful, if it seems like it's a deviation from the norm, start to really retrench, turn the situation. If somebody puts you in an emotional state that you feel like you have to do something, try and turn the situation around on them. Start asking them for information. Who are they? Why are they? What do they possibly think that they can put you in this situation? And ask for facts, because they don't have them. They don't have facts they want to tell you, because then that gives cues to who their information is. So anyway, be really careful out there, and good luck with your financial future.
I think to reiterate one of the points you made that's so important is scams oftentimes are trying to use the pressure of time to get you to act what ends up being imprudently, because you feel pressured to do so quickly. And if you're feeling pressured to act, that's a good time to step back and say, I shouldn't be acting. Unless you absolutely are 100% sure of what the situation is, you absolutely are certain that who you're speaking to, etc. As they say, act in haste, repent in leisure. There's almost never a time where it has to happen right this minute. It has to happen today. It can almost always wait a day or even a few days so that things can be sorted out and handled appropriately. And rarely does that, even in a case where someone is in foreclosure, whatever. No bank is going to move so quickly that a few days are going to mean the difference between being foreclosed and not. That's just not how the system works. So. Yeah.
Very well.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for coming on and talking about all these things. They're a little bit depressing on the one hand. On the other hand, it's so important to be aware of the way that people are taken advantage of, especially elderly people, our parents, our grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc. Or if we have relatives with special needs who are still somewhat independent. All of these, and we ourselves, I get scam emails all the time. We're also vulnerable to this, and we unfortunately have to be vigilant to make sure that we're not victimized. So,
well, and if you think it's depressing to know about it, just think of how depressing it is to know about it with $40,000 less in your bank account because you didn't figure it out until then. That's the thing is I think, you just have to recognize that this is out there, and, and really try to to work with it and know it, and not to dwell on it, right? It's not like spend every minute, oh my God, they're
Right,
after me
right.
now, right? But to really just recognize it and take the steps that are necessary so you can go on with your life, and
Indeed.
be nice to your grandkids, have a
Right.
nice life. That's what we all deserve as seniors.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. For sure. Well, again, thanks so much
all
for coming
righty,
on and talking about this. If you'll just hang tight for a couple of minutes, I'm going to wrap up the show and then we'll speak for a minute offline. So,
very good.
so first of all, those of you who are watching live, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to know you're with us, and we very much appreciate you tuning in. And for those of you who are watching the replay of this, thanks for doing so as well. I don't say this too often, but for this particular episode, I really encourage you to think about someone who could benefit from being aware of how they can be victimized, and send them a link to this show, and encourage them to watch it. I just did the same thing with a webinar my bank did. I sent it to a number of my business associates. It's just really important to spread this information, and Tom does a great job in explaining these things. And so I encourage you to do that. If you have any thoughts, comments, criticisms, you can the links to the social media will be in the show notes after this episode posts on my YouTube channel, and I always happy to hear those comments. So upcoming, so tomorrow at 5 p.m. is my every other week show, Jiggers' Place. We're going to sit back, have a cocktail, the Federalist cocktail, and we're going to be talking about the Federalist Papers. So there's a lot of discussion going on right now. What does the Constitution really say? What does it really allow, etc.? So we're going to go right to the source, the documents that were written by the framers or people who were involved in the ratification of the Constitution, who wrote about what it really meant. We're not going to look at all 85. We're going to look at a handful of them just to give you an idea of where you can learn about this. But it's best done over a cocktail. If you want the recipe to the cocktail, please go to my website, bemmel.com, sign up for my email list. And that way, the morning before the Jiggers' Place shows, you'll get an email. It'll have the cocktail address, and you can make it along with me at the beginning of the show. Next week on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Trust and Estates Weekly. My guest is Jolene Blackburn, and she's going to be talking about funeral planning. So I mentioned during Tom's presentation that a well-done estate plan should deal with the issues that occur prior to death. One of those issues is funeral planning. So rather than leaving your loved ones in their time of grief to deal with all those issues, it can all be set up in advance so that it's done the way you want it done. And it's relieves your loved ones of the burden of having to take care of that. So I encourage you to tune in and listen to or watch the conversation between Jolene and me. On Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. And then a week from today, we'll be back with the next edition of People Making Money. So, Tom, again, one final thank you before we sign off. Thanks so much for
Thanks,
coming on the
Kevin.
show.
I really appreciated being here.
Yeah, and for all of you viewers, wishing you a wonderful rest of the day, and signing off as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my bell. You know you are.